My name is Eleanor Vance, but everyone's called me Ellie for as long as I can remember. I'm 67 years old, and my story is proof that the deepest betrayals often come from the people you love the most. The funeral for my husband, Arthur, was a cold, gray Tuesday. The whole town of Oakhaven seemed to be holding its breath. As the pastor spoke words about heaven and rest, all I could feel was the hollowness in my chest. I'd spent 43 years with that man. For him to be gone, it just didn't feel real. During the reception at the church hall, as people offered me limp handshakes and sad casseroles, a thin, older man I didn't recognize approached me. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. He pressed a folded piece of paper into my palm, his eyes wide with a look I couldn't place. Fear? Or maybe pity. "Your husband was a good man," he whispered, then vanished into the crowd before I could ask his name. Later that night, alone in the deafening silence of our home, I remembered the note. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. The handwriting was shaky, urgent. He didn't fall. It wasn't an accident. Don't trust your sons. My blood turned to ice. I looked at a photo on the mantelpiece. Arthur and I with our boys, Leo and Caleb, on a summer vacation years ago. Their smiling faces suddenly looked like masks. Something was wrong. I'd felt it at the funeral. The way they stood so straight, their tears so clean and brief. Their hugs were cold, obligatory. And now this note confirmed the dread that had been coiling in my gut. A life built by hand. Arthur and I were Oakhaven originals. We met right out of high school. I was a waitress at the local diner, and he was the handsome boy with grease under his fingernails who could make any engine purr. He inherited his father's auto shop, Vance and Son Auto, and for him, it wasn't just a job. It was his art. We married young, with more love than money, and built our life in a small two-bedroom house on Maple Street. When our first son, Leo, was born, Arthur was overjoyed. He'd finally have the son for his son. 2 years later, Caleb came along, quieter and always in his older brother's shadow. We were a family. Arthur was the kind of dad you see in movies, teaching the boys how to change a tire, taking them fishing at Miller's Pond, telling them stories that made them believe they could do anything. But as they grew up, the world outside Oakhaven began to call to them. Leo especially was ambitious. He looked at our simple life and saw a cage. "I'm not spending my life smelling like gasoline, Dad," he told Arthur after graduation, rejecting his father's offer to take over the shop one day. "I'm getting out of this town and making real money." It was a stake through Arthur's heart, but he never let the boy see it. Leo went to the city and got into real estate, and of course, Caleb followed. The money came fast. Soon they were visiting in slick German cars, wearing suits that cost more than our property taxes, and looking at their childhood home with embarrassment. Then came Brenda, the woman Leo married. She was sharp and polished, and made no secret of her disdain for us. The first time they came for Sunday dinner, she spent the whole time scrolling on her phone. "You two should really sell this place," she'd said, waving a dismissive hand. "There are some lovely assisted living facilities downtown." Assisted living? They wanted us to put out to pasture. To them, we weren't parents anymore. We were a problem to be solved, an old asset to be liquidated. The pressure mounted. "Think of it as an early inheritance," Leo said one evening, trying to get us to sign papers to sell the house. "You're old now. You can't keep living in the past." That night, Arthur turned to me, his eyes clouded with a worry I'd never seen. "It's not just about the money, Ellie," he said. "There's a darkness in them I don't recognize." He was right. I just had no idea how deep that darkness ran.
The accident. The call came on a Monday morning. It was the hospital. Mrs. Vance, there's been an accident at your husband's shop. A car lift failed. He's in critical condition. The world tilted on its axis. Arthur? Have an accident? That man was the most meticulous person I'd ever known. He checked his equipment every single morning. It didn't make sense. When I rushed to the hospital, Leo and Caleb were already there, speaking in hushed tones with a doctor. How did they know? How did they get there before me? "It's bad, Mom," Leo said, his hug feeling more like a restraint. "The doctors say he has a severe head injury. It doesn't look good." The next few days were a waking nightmare. I sat by Arthur's bedside, holding his hand, praying for a miracle. But my sons, they were different. They weren't grieving. They were planning. I heard them in the hallway, their voices low and urgent, talking about insurance policies, payouts, and probate. "The work policy alone should be over $100,000, I heard Caleb whisper. On the third day, the doctors told us he was brain dead. There was nothing more they could do. "We have to be practical, Mom," Leo said, his voice void of emotion. "Dad wouldn't want to live like this." They made the decision to take him off life support. I felt like I was watching it happen to someone else, a movie about a woman whose heart was being ripped from her chest. At 2:15 a.m. on a Thursday, my Arthur was gone. The unraveling truth. The note from the funeral was the first thread I pulled. The next day, I went to the auto shop. The police had already released it, and I expected to find chaos, oil slicks, damaged equipment. Instead, the place was eerily clean. I walked over to the hydraulic lift that had supposedly failed. It was in perfect working order, not a scratch on it. A cold dread washed over me. There had no accident. In Arthur's cluttered office, I found his old leather-bound journal. His last entry, dated the day before he died, made my hands shake. "The boys came by today, pushing about the new insurance policy again. Leo says it's to protect Ellie, but the way he looks at me, it's like he's measuring a coffin. Something is wrong. I don't trust them." He knew it. He had felt it coming. That evening, I got a call from a man named Frank Miller. "Mrs. Vance, my name is Frank. I served in the Army with Arthur. He called me a few weeks ago. He was worried about his sons. After I heard what happened, I started making some calls, looking into things. I think you and I need to talk." We met the next day at a diner. Frank was a private investigator now. He told me that after Arthur's call, he had a gut feeling and had placed a listening device on their home phone line. He'd retrieved it the night of the funeral. "I'm sorry to have to show you this, Ellie," he said gently, placing a small audio recorder on the table. He pressed play. I heard my sons' voices, clear as day. Leo and Caleb. "It has to be tomorrow," Leo's voice said. He's starting to get suspicious. "Did you get it?" Caleb asked. "Yeah, a whole gallon of antifreeze. I'll put it in his morning coffee tomorrow before he leaves for the shop. They told him it's a new creamer Brenda bought. He won't suspect a thing. The docs will think it's a heart attack or a stroke. By the time they figure it out, it'll be too late." The recording continued. They talked about the insurance money, how it would solve all their debt problems. Leo owed money to some dangerous people in the city, and Caleb had a gambling problem. Their own father's life was worth the price of their mistakes. Then came the part that stopped my heart. "What about Mom?" Caleb asked. There was a pause, then Leo's voice, cold and final. "Once the money comes through, we'll handle her. She'll be so lost without him. A simple overdose of her sleeping pills. Grieving widow. No one will bat an eye. Then it's all ours." I didn't realize I was screaming until Frank gently took my hand. They had murdered my husband, and they were coming for me next. The final stand. Frank and I knew we had to move fast. We were on our way to show the evidence to Sheriff Brody when a white van pulled into my driveway. Leo and Caleb got out, followed by a stern-looking woman in scrubs holding a clipboard. "Mom," Leo said, forcing a smile. "We were so worried. You haven't been answering your phone. "You're not well. We're here to take you somewhere you can get some help." The woman stepped forward. "Mrs. Vance, I'm from the Oakwood Care Facility. Your sons have arranged for your admission." They weren't going to wait for sleeping pills. They were going to have me locked away, declared incompetent, and silenced for good. They moved toward me, their eyes hard. It wasn't concern. It was a kidnapping. Adrenaline I didn't know I possessed surged through me. I shoved past them, ran back into the house, and bolted the door. I could hear them pounding on it as I fumbled with my phone, my fingers flying across the screen to dial 911. Minutes later, Sheriff Brody's patrol car screeched into the driveway, lights flashing. As my sons tried to explain their fabricated story of a confused, grieving mother, Frank Miller pulled up behind the sheriff and handed him the recorder. I watched through the window as the sheriff listened, his face hardening from concern to disbelief, then to pure fury. He looked at Leo and Caleb, who had frozen in place, the color draining from their faces. He didn't have to say a word. He just pointed to the back of his car. The trial was a blur of pain and grim determination. I sat in that courtroom and testified against my own children. I watched the jury listen to the recordings, their faces a mixture of horror and disgust. My boys, the men I had raised, were found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy. They were sentenced to life in prison. 5 years have passed. I'm 72 now. The little house on Maple Street is still my home. I had Leo's name painted over on the sign at the shop. Now it just says Vance Auto. But I don't fix cars. I turned the garage into a community greenhouse where I grow flowers and vegetables. It's a place of life now. Leo took his own life in prison a year after the sentencing. Caleb is in the state psychiatric hospital, his mind shattered by the weight of what he did. He sends me letters, scribbled apologies from a man who is no longer my son. Frank, Arthur's old army buddy, became my rock. He comes over every Sunday, and we sit on the porch drinking iced tea and talking about everything and nothing. He helped me find my footing in a world I no longer recognized. Justice didn't bring Arthur back. It didn't heal the hole in my heart where my sons used to be, but it gave me peace. It honored the good man my husband was. His legacy isn't in the sons who bore his name, but in the truth that finally came to light. He was betrayed by his own blood, but in the end, his love and the life we built together was the only thing that truly endured.